Hey guys, this is John here in Los Angeles with the Alpha Channel update for Monday, October 21st, 2024. And we are going to start as always with the Hakir Halderson Yggdrasil deck. And this is a pretty heavy duty Norse Pantheon deck that shows all the characters. This isn't actually a character, but it's pretty cool. Naglfar, the ship of conflict. Naglfar, the ship of conflict. Which of course makes me think of Skidbladnir, which was Odin's ship, and Sleipnir, his eight-legged horse. But the ship of conflict really makes me think about the Norm Macdonald ship joke that he told Conan O'Brien on Conan's show one night. He asked Conan what the most valuable kind of ship could possibly be. Is it like a gold-plated ship? Do you think a spaceship, a diamond ship? What's the most valuable ship you could have? And he went on and sort of dragged it out for a bit. Finally, at the end, he's like, "No, Conan, it's friendship." And that's the ship of conflict is Naglfar, but friendship is just friendship. And we have an old friend back again, Conan 251. 250, no, it's 252. We did 251 already. This is 252. And it is drawn by Mike Doherty and written by Roy Thomas. Our old friend is back. And Conan has shed a couple friends. Sonya and Zula are nowhere to be found. Princess Yasmila is nowhere to be found. Only Hob remains. And we start this one off a lot like we started off 247. Here we have a village where white phosphorus from basically what the Jews are doing to their enemies in the Middle East right now. They're raining white phosphorus down on this village. And so these raining hail balls are hitting people and buildings. And even though it's snowy out, they can't put the fire out. Here it's magic, but we know it's white phosphorus. And it's being used against civilian populations right now today by the cabal of the synagogue of Satan that has taken over the United States and runs our foreign policy and our domestic policy, let's face it. Conan wakes up. That was his home village, and that was a dream of that raining fire burning everyone in his home village. There's a few stories where Conan has dreams of his home village and wants to go back. And here he is in an inn with Hob. He's no longer with Princess Yasmila. And he wakes up out of a nightmare, and Hob fills in the backstory. Hob fills in the exposition. In the last episode, Hob was asleep in the sand, while Conan told Princess Yasmila a story of his childhood. And in this one, Hob explains that the events of the Savage Sword of Conan number 3, or Conan Saga number 12, I believe, is the one that is listed as the source for this. That those events are this backstory right here, where Conan went off to rescue Princess Yasmila's brother in Ophir. He got him out of prison, and they fought their way back. And when they got back, Princess Yasmila had married that goofball with the Snoop Doggy Dogg pigtails and the bald head. She's married him and doesn't want Conan anymore. And Conan says, "I don't care, there's plenty of girls where that came from." And he goes and finds a couple more girlfriends and goes out and eventually ends up meeting up with Hob again, apparently. And that brings them up to where they are now. So that's a little flashback backstory. If there's a trope number 4, it has to be flashbacks in the Conan comics. You don't get sound effects, but you get Conan throwing a sword, you get Conan going to jail, and you get Conan seducing the girls. We've already had Conan seducing the girls. Even in a flashback, it is what it is. I'm sure he does it again in this episode, I believe. Here we have a dead girl being marched through the streets of whatever city they're in. And she's a very pretty young girl, and they notice, as you do. There's not many parades. And this one has people in, I've noticed that my fingers put shadows on the pages, and it makes it hard to see sometimes. Apologies for that. So I would try to be smarter about that. But Mike Doherty's pencils are beautiful. They're awesome. They're perfect. This is Conan. Ernie Chan on inks. I'm as familiar with this Conan as I am with Barry Smith's and John Buscema's. He's that hardwired into my memory. And so here we get a little bit more backstory. Conan and Hob get confronted. First they get confronted by this old guy who's yelling about Shuma Gorath, like a Renfield out in the streets. And Shuma Gorath was the name that was being chanted in Conan's dream, so he immediately freaks out. What do you know about Shuma Gorath? And then these priests give Conan a hard time. And, excuse me, this newsprint just does not want to turn. And so here he tells Hob to shut up. And when he goes to sleep, it gets explained. When he goes to sleep later on that night, the dead girl comes into his room and tries to pull out his sword. They get into a fight and he throws her out the window and she's nowhere to be seen. So Conan is no longer in charge of an army. So we don't have that complicated moving part to deal with. He doesn't have a girlfriend with him, or two. So we don't have the Red Sonja, Princess Yasmila love triangle, love-hate thing between them over Conan going on. We also don't have the competitiveness with Almaric or the King Thessalides, whoever that guy was. All you have is Hob, which is like the usual sidekick, Conan-esque sidekick. Guy who will steal money to pay their dinner bill, but occasionally Conan will have to fight him out of trouble. So Conan throws the ghoul out the window, and she's nowhere to be seen. And he runs over to Hob's room, and Hob is not there, but there's a white handprint on his door, and there's a white handprint on Conan's door. So obviously some sorcery, some witchery, some treachery is afoot. This is a very Solomon Kane-esque story too. I wouldn't be surprised to learn that this is stolen directly from Robert E. Howard, but this is also awesome Roy Thomas. The dialogue is perfect. All the characters are in character. And this, I love this. Here we get Conan finds Hob in the stables with another girl who Conan kills because she's already dead, which seems a little abrupt. Conan kills her. She might be alive, but he says that she's not. And then the dead girl with this guy in the mask break in. And this is like right out of the X-Men or Avengers. This is very comic book. They have a gang of ghouls, and they're going to attack Conan and Hob and kill them for their master. Who, this is also really cool. Check this out. I love this bad guy down here too with the mask and the all-black bodysuit. He's just right out of the X-Men. Here he is again, telling his minions to attack. And on the next page, the sorceress takes over the dead girl's body and gives Conan her sort of James Bond expository speech. This is great comic booking. Not just enough moving parts for a one-issue bit. It's not trying to be too much. Look, the military engagement stuff works if you just do that. You can't do military engagement and sword and sorcery and romance thing all together. That never works. That's big budget. Leave that to Martin Scorsese for Gangs of New York. And the worst part of Gangs of New York is the Carmen Diaz romance. It's the part that's out of place. Make that movie an hour shorter and just have it be Leonardo DiCaprio against Bill the Butcher. Same thing in Departed. Who was the girl in Departed? I don't remember. Oh yeah, it was the girl that he knew that. Well, there was two girls. The girl that Matt Damon was with, and the other girl Matt Damon was with, and the girl that Leonardo liked. You don't need those. I mean, I guess you could have them, but sometimes it's too much and it's not handled right. And in this one, the girl is the traitor. So, you know, that kind of, and she's the first antagonist too. Girl's still there, but you don't have Red Sonja bickering with the dead girl. You know what I mean? or the princess. Bickering really brings down a comic book. It really does. You know, Family Ties or whatever, you know, Married with Children, Arrested Development, sure. But do I want to watch characters? Do I want to read characters bicker in a comic book? Not really. That's not the kind of clever dialogue you're looking for here, you know? And there is some examples of clever dialogue in this. I don't remember right now, but there was. Oh, this is kind of cool. Hob throws Conan his knife, and Conan is buried under all these corpses, and he's not able to swing his sword. And the corpses are dead, so you basically have to get a headshot that shatters the skull or breaks the spine or, you know, lops off a limb. But Conan, we get our obligatory, it's not a sword throw, but a knife throw. And he catches this guy right in the mask, which is, you know, right between the eyes. This is beautiful. This is what a comic book is supposed to be. This would be this would be a great half-hour cartoon. This would be a great Conan cartoon episode. You know what I mean? It's not trying to be too much. It's got just enough violence. You could have this guy bleed like black witch blood and then have his body burn up. That's basically what they're doing on, you know, the PG-13 stuff. You could have it be that kind of violence. Conan hacks through their bodies and they burst into flames. That'd be kind of awesome because he's got a silver sword, but Conan doesn't use magic weapons. So Hob and Conan ride out of town, and that's the end of the episode. That's the end of the issue. 251, 252, back on track. What more do you want? Yesterday I was going to talk about Speculators, and I got distracted because I'm a fucking retard, and I reserve the right to be a hypocrite. So my artistic brain can get carried away with my logical brain. And since there's only one of us in charge, once I get off on a track, it's hard to bring it back. But I did want to talk about speculation in comic books. And no one was looking for Conan 252 to be a standout, breakout hit. But this is a good. This is better than the last 4 or 5 that we've read. So, and it's simple. And this was interesting. When I sold my massive collection of fucking comics, probably $100,000 worth of comics that I ended up selling for like 10 or 15,000. Probably less than I sold on this. And this I bought and sold after I sold all of mine. So this, meaning something's killing the children. I mostly got rid of them because I thought I was going to have to leave the place where I lived. And I felt like it was an anchor. And like I had never broken into comics. And this was the beginning of the culture war. And I was completely broke. And so it just felt like it was time to cut the cord a little bit. It felt like the things you own, you don't own the things you own, they end up owning you. And so I gave a lot of them away. I sold a lot of them for not much money. And I learned something I already knew. That my favorite books were the least expensive. You know, they were the most overprinted, the most hyped. Now, that's not always true. I had a whole bunch of X-Men that were valuable, like Gambit's first appearance. I had X-23's first appearance in Runaways or whatever it was. NYX, I think. NYX number 3 or 4 or 2. I had all of them, right? Sold all of that stuff. And I've watched the greatest artists not get their fair due. I've watched the greatest artists be poked and prodded by the industry until they lose their shit. I've watched great artists be goaded into fights with other artists and other industry infighting. And it's heartbreaking when X-Men number 1. Now, everyone knew that book wasn't going to make a bunch of money. Because it's the most sold comic book in the history of comic books. Kind of like the Bible is the best-selling book in the world. That doesn't mean that basically means if you have a garage full of Bibles, it's going to take a lot of work to sell them because everybody's got one. So if you have a garage full of X-Men number 1, that's not going to help you or anybody. But that's like one of the best books. That's the book you want to... So all my nieces and nephews all got tons of X-Men comics and G.I. Joe comics, and they didn't get the Conans. The Conans I kept. But they got like all the other stuff. All the Avengers, all the Spider-Man, Web of Spider-Man, Spectacular Spider-Man, Batman, you know, Nightwing. The Nightwing run by Scott McDaniel is awesome, incredible art, you know. So the Speculators, I get why Red Raven #1 is super expensive, right? I get why Superman #1 is expensive. Here's the part about speculation that's really unique to comics and baseball cards, I suppose, if baseball cards were still a thing. Why people got pushed out of baseball, and blacks don't have the intelligence for baseball cards, let's face it, right? Baseball cards are all about rankings and who's going to do what and buying someone's rookie card before they become a star. And that's, come on, that's beyond you're talking about basketball Americans. They're not going to do that. So baseball cards are kind of dead. That's really Bruce Willis's generation, right? Kevin Smith, I think those are the last guys. Some early Gen Xers, late Gen X had nothing to do with baseball cards. You know, we were into skateboards and BMX and, you know, all that kind of stuff. Football, I guess, you know, sports, guys who got into sports. But Speculators, the unique thing about comic book Speculators is an issue where a big character is first debuts, like Psylocke or Gambit or, you know, Conan the Barbarian's first appearance, the Crow's first appearance in Caliber Presents. That's, you know, that the Tick #1 first printing, Johnny the Homicidal Maniac first printing, books that are first printing, and of course those are the ones I like, but those aren't the really I would never dream of collecting. I heard of a guy who collected all the Amazing Spider-Mans, and when he got them all, he sold his collection and bought Heidi Ho Comics in Santa Monica, which has been open for probably 50 years now. I bought comics there forever when I was working in Santa Monica. And so there's, you know, something like that, but I could never chase like Namor #1, right? I would never care about Magneto's first appearance. I did get an autographed Hawk and Dove, which was kind of stupid because I could have gotten anything else autographed by Rob Liefeld. Like, I don't think I could afford, even at that point, X Factor 98. It was probably already too expensive to get that autographed by Rob. Or an X-Force #1 would have been easy, but I tried to be clever. And I've got a Hawk and Dove here. I do have an X-Force autographed here somewhere, X-Force #1. I have one of those. That's it, I have that. But so what? Like, everyone has that. Everyone has that. The best, and I had, like I said, I had a Walking Dead #1, but I can't, and the best thing about the first few Walking Dead issues was Tony Moore's art. The way he did asymmetrical facial expressions was just, and then he went on to do Deadpool. Sorry, just a brief interruption. It's weird recording these by yourself. Mail's getting delivered, so. But yeah, he went on to do Deadpool, and I'm sure, I don't know what he's doing now. I'm sure he's doing something awesome. But Speculators, doing that for me as a wannabe artist and an author, I don't know if I never wanted to be a comic book writer. That's something I've kind of fallen into because I was working on a comic on my own after I'd finished these novels, and I showed them off to Jay, who did both of these and this comic book right here. He kind of took over what I was working on, but he never did read the books. So the communication was always a little bit strained, and I had very specific plans. Now, see, part of it was I didn't set out to do this for another artist. I set out to do this for myself. So my thinking was already clouded. It was already very hard set. And the idea of me not letting him do this when he's regularly producing art on this level and sending it to me for free, just showing it to me, like, there's like, how do I, my version of this page, the black and whites, you know, the black and white art does not compare to his. So how do you say no to that, you know? But the contributions, I didn't appreciate them as much as I should have. And I was not versed in how to write comics the Marvel way, which is very different from how to draw comics the Marvel way. There's a video out right now called The Marvel Method. You guys should check it out. And a bunch of Marvel writers and artists talk about how the artist goes and on a couple pages of layout of like outline or a few paragraphs of story, they will essentially draw the entire comic and then submit it for inking and lettering. And at the same time the inking starts, the lettering starts. The editor and the writer will look at it and he will write his script. Then the inking will get done, he'll adjust his script, they'll start putting in the word balloons, and the letterer will come in. And over that process, I hope the writer is looking at it multiple times. You still see mistakes in comics where there's a hyphen where there didn't need to be. Like the balloon could have been a little bit fatter and fit the dialogue a little bit better. But they were doing this stuff without computers, you know? I was thinking about that today too. Roy Thomas wrote over 250 issues of Conan, Savage Sword. Conan Saga has reprinted Savage Sword, but so what? So Savage Sword and Conan the Barbarian concurrently at the same time. When I did this book happens over the course of a week, and there's a lot of characters, and I had to create a spreadsheet that tracked every character for every minute of the day for those 8 or 9 days. So I knew where all of them were, what they were involved in. So I didn't have them in two places at the same time, or have some event overlap another event where they needed to know information that they clearly didn't. All of that stuff matters. And in this book, they very deftly handle this backstory, this flashback, where Hob tells this whole story of what happened, how Princess Yasmila ended up marrying this other guy who Conan had a fight with 4 issues ago when he went off to rescue her brother. You know, it's sort of like he goes off to war to rescue, well, worse than going off to war for your country, he went off to rescue her brother and she married someone else. Imagine Ulysses coming home and the queen has already married someone. Look at this. Best comics ever. Not worth that much at all. So, is that a tragedy? No, it's just curious. It's a paradox, is what it is. It's a paradox. And if you're a speculator, the most valuable comics are by no stretch of the imagination the most valuable comics as a reader or as an appreciator of fine art. And this is fine fucking art. Look at what they're able to do with 4-color process and black. This is fucking fine art. I think about, you guys have no idea how much fine art gets wasted in advertising. Guys, storyboard artists, basically doing an entire commercial of storyboards in color in a day and delivering that as a presentation at the end of the day, and no one ever sees it. The commercial might get made, it might not. The guys get paid $1,500 and they, burn out Prismacolor markers. There's a whole industry of that out here on the West Coast, and I'm sure in New York too. Everywhere you have advertising houses, and nowadays they're doing those and lookbooks for movies, doing that with AI. Why not? The advertising houses should be doing that with AI. The idea of paying an artist $1,500 a day to do that stuff you can do on Pinterest, that's absurd. As an independent filmmaker, you can never afford to do that. You need to be able to make fine art with no money. And to that end, storyboards are comics. Comics are storyboards you can sell. Now, we're seeing that in houses like Image, where they're pitching whole series and they're drawing scenes that should only be shot for television. In this, they're not wasting any, look at, and here's what I love about this one, right? It's not a giant army Conan's up against. He's up against one crew of extras. The same kids that you have in the high school dance can double as this villain here with his gang of ghouls. You know what I mean? The same people in the bar, right? This is all the same cast of characters from beginning to end. And then you dress a bunch of them up as zombies. You can always do that with ninjas. All this stuff is like, this is a great comic. So it's strange what the speculators value versus what the readers value versus what writers and artists value. The big thing, the big hit right now are these artist editions, and I want to get my hands on those, digital or hard copy. Hard copy, I'll be at them with a magnifying glass, but digital, I can scale it up on the computer and look at how they're doing, how much detail they're investing into where, and whether or not it's paying off. That's the part I'm really starting to evaluate now as I get into lighting and whatnot. So I've been coloring. I was coloring today. It's very hard to take apart someone else's flats. My friend Jay did a bunch of grayscale for this angel, and it's very hard to piece that apart. He grouped them in ways that I wouldn't have, so he's got shadows, or not shadows, but flat colors overlapping, flat colors connected with different parts of the armor, and separating them is almost, it would almost be less work to start over from scratch. So that's kind of, but I'm seeing how he did it. You know, there's an element of that that's valuable too. It's kind of like when I was first editing for TV, and they make you look at other editors' sequences so you can see how they're doing the music, how they're doing their layers and their effects, and you know, blah blah blah. All that matters. It all matters. It matters because the pacing and the flow of the comic needs to be smooth. You don't want any jarring interruptions. I remember when I got to this ad right here, I so wanted to turn the page and the newsprint like sort of shuffled a little bit, and I wanted to know what happens next because this is right where he throws her out of the window, right? And I got this double ad, and God, I hate these ads, you know? These double page ads. They're the worst. And especially to put them in well, it's not quite the middle of the comic, but it might as well be. And then we get this one page again. So I hate full page ads in a comic, but I appreciate full page ads for other comics. I hate full page text ads, but this I love. This is like an extra page of comic book. The Spider-Man and the Twinkies, the Hostess stuff, if it was done with better art, you can do ads like that all day long. I love the shit out of them. Do clever advertisements, and like Mad Magazine, every line of text in Mad Magazine was a joke. It was sarcastic. It was subversive. So speculation turns your stomach. It makes you value different things. It makes you look at things differently. And ultimately, I think that's in a large part how they were able to break the writer's values, is through the speculation market. When you have speculators hyping up books that ultimately aren't worth anything, but are a big flash in the pan because, ooh, so-and-so has a different sexual preference, you know, that. And look at how played out it is now. Now you're almost getting mainstream smut. That's where it leads you. So what's next? You know, Superman's bulge. What's stopping them? They canceled Frank Cho over Wonder Woman's side boob, and they just published Nightwing's butt. DC is schizophrenic right now. Because Jim, look at what Image did to Chris Claremont, and it tells you everything you need to know about mainstream comics. When Todd and Willis and Jim and Rob and all these guys whose first names I'm saying, Mark, who I've never met, Todd McFarlane, Jim Lee, Mark Silvestri, Jim Valentino, Rob Liefeld, I think I already said, maybe, and I know there's more. Willis Patricio. They also got Chris Claremont, the writer of the X-Men, to leave with them. Chris Claremont, as far as I know, has never picked up a pencil in his life. I've never seen any sketches by him. I did get to meet him at a convention and buy his novel, his paperback novel, which I was very thankful for. I read it. It was okay. It wasn't X-Men. But the X-Men characters, he had a great sandbox to play with there. The X-Men is very unique. They have the 4-to-1 ratio and kind of double that, you know, the perfect ratio of girls to guys. But more importantly, the characters know who they are, and it's very easy to write them. They have instant dynamics, character conflicts that are easy to play off of. If you raise the stakes in the right way, you have to raise the stakes in the right way to make those characters react in the right way. That's why this is called Alpha Channel. I don't write, I channel characters. I find the right characters and I put them together for the right reactions, and I keep working until that's interesting. So, but when they did that and they took Chris Claremont with them, and then they shelved him, they didn't give him any work. Marvel refused to hire him back, and eventually Marvel did what was called golden handcuffs. And from what I understand, he's paid not to work for anybody. And that is, I blame Jim Lee, and because he was supposed to work for Jim Lee, and Jim Lee pushed him off to Willis Patricio, whose father had just passed away, and so Willis Patricio wasn't working at all. And then when Willis Patricio came back, he wanted to do wet works. He didn't want to work with Chris Claremont, and Jim Lee was already at this point probably looking at DC, and what do I know? But so Jim Lee's been at DC ever since, and that's a person who doesn't respect story. He respects deadlines, sort of the Eric July motto. Batman must come out on time. It doesn't matter if the story sucks or who writes it. So that's, that's an interesting, when that's your flagship character, yeah, I get that. That's no excuse to let clowns write it. That's no excuse to set it on fire and then piss on it, because that's shock art. How much shock art can you do until the audience is burned out? Shock art is the other side of the gold-plated radio flyer. Nobody wants to buy a gold-plated radio flyer wagon, but no one wants to buy a dumpster fire either. It's fun to watch, but no one wants to take it home. So that's, like Joker 2, everyone's saying, yeah, I'll watch it once, but I don't want to watch it twice. If you make something that no one wants to watch twice, you're in the wrong business. I wasn't a fan of the Hangover movies. I saw the appeal of Joker. What I liked best about Joker was the idea that he was maybe Batman's older half-brother. That was the cleverest thing to me. The rest of it is after-school special about drug addicts. Who cares? You know what I mean? That wasn't fascinating. He shot a talk show host. Plenty of talk show hosts should probably get shot. If we had a world without rule of law, which these idiots seem to say that they want, defund the police, man, you guys have no idea what you're asking for. You're giving guys like me an opportunity to live out their wildest fantasies with no repercussions whatsoever. Are you out of your fucking minds? So yeah, speculation in comics will break your heart. Buying comics because they're worth money, not because you like them. It's one thing to buy comics that you like because they're worth money. Like, I want to own the entire run of Conan the Barbarian. At this point, I could buy it on eBay, with the exception of number 1, for probably less than $500. For probably like $300 for like readers' copies. And I might do that and have a bunch of doubles, but I don't care about having a bunch of 9/8s. I would only because I'm doing this channel, I would review 9/8 comics to show them off with you guys, because it's sort of like smoking a really expensive cigar, only I don't like the taste of cigars. So, I suppose I would like drinking really expensive wine if I drank wine. They don't make expensive Gatorade, and I don't drink Gatorade anymore anyhow. They make expensive water, but I can't justify buying it. So I don't know. The craft of conflict, the ship of conflict. And stories are really the craft of conflict. So yeah, should I tell you guys about the chapter in this after dinner? After dinner, Fox goes back. After dinner, there's this really kind of cool bit where there's a satellite up in the sky orbiting the world, and there's actually astronauts on this satellite. And they are orbiting, they're like a communications satellite, and they watch Dr. Fox. So Project Epsilon implodes into a single amplifier, and it's this giant crater, because this shockwave goes out and then comes back in. And there's this single amplifier left, and Dr. Fox drives out there in the middle of the night and picks it up, and they're watching him. And they make some jokes and whatnot, but so now he's got 2 amplifiers, the Micronics, which is the original, and the Metacron, which is this new one, which is all the people and the metal from the Project Epsilon building compressed into one device. And the people were like 1,000 death row criminals or something like that, like a lot of them. And now they're all their minds are compressed in this one device. So it's like an evil device and a neutral device. This one's not good or evil, but this one is predominantly ruthless and cruel. And he has to figure out how to balance them and what happens. And so that's the 5th chapter, not counting the 2 prologues. And yeah, check it out. Legacy of a Mad Scientist and The Legend of Ashley Fox. Here's audiobooks. You can download them for free as ebooks from Smashwords, or pay $1 on eBay, or pay $16 for the hardback books, hardcover, not hardback, but paperback books, and have them sent to your hard copy paperback. Have them sent to your house. This is a PDF. You could buy this and print this at home. And check it out. It will not print properly. For that, you have to, But this is Ashley Fox, The Last Valkyrie. Ashley Fox, Ninja Babysitter, The Last Valkyrie. So, all right, talk to you guys tomorrow.